Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I want to talk about why we will see some changes in the housing market and how it affects you particularly. So we all know that interest rates were very, very low to the point where the Fed had it at zero. And so you know what the banks are going to do. They're going to try and make a little bit more money than what the Fed base rate is. And so people were getting mortgages at 2%, 3%, even 4%, right? And in that time, personally, I didn't know that it was extremely cheap. I just knew what the rates were and where I could buy at. The sentiment that I started to buy with was it is cheaper to buy than to rent. And because of that, or at least if it was equal to that, I would purchase the property because it made more sense to just buy than to rent. Now, that is not the case. Now it is more expensive to buy than it is to rent in most areas. I have to say most areas because there are still going to be some places around the world where you can purchase a property today and it will still be cheaper than renting. But in Ohio, New York, California, Las Vegas, Washington, D.C., Texas, you are not going to find a property that you can purchase right now that is cheaper than renting in the same area that you would like to live in. I had to put that in there, in the same area that you would like to live in, because you can find a great property in a horrible area and you may be able to buy it for just as much as you would paying in rent. But if you wouldn't have rented in that area, why would you buy in that same area? You're going to end up selling, you're going to end up moving, and that's a whole nother issue in itself. Let me talk about that briefly before we really get into the topic. Americans today stay in their house or refinance their home a minimum of every 5 to 7 years. What does that mean? The banks front load the interest rates on the houses on a 30-year or a 15-year mortgage. So that means you're going to pay more interest to a bank than you pay to yourself every single month for the first initial 7 to 10 years. So if you refinance or sell your home every 5 to 7 years, you are literally just paying the bank a ton of money and you're never really receiving your principal. You're never receiving your money for the weight that you've had in that property, in that house. So when people tell me that their home is an investment, but they go to a new home every 5 to 7 years, it's not an investment. It's you just wanting something bigger and better, and it's really like a savings account for you more than an investment. Because if you're not getting more principal than your interest rate, you're losing, in my opinion. Now, some people might say, well, I'm still winning because I'm paying myself a little bit every single month. Even if it's not as much as the bank, I'm still paying myself. Do you want to win a little bit or do you want to win a lot? I'm here to change mindsets. I'm here to change the way people think. I'm here to be a winner, a big winner, not a small winner. And in order to do that, we cannot be refinancing our houses and we cannot be selling our houses every 5 to 7 years. We need to be able to get more money in principal than in interest. One of my properties is about to hit that mark next month. And by the time I'm making this video, it probably did because we're in December when I'm filming this video. And so I probably just changed from paying more interest than principal to now one of my properties I'm actually paying more principal than interest, which is a great milestone for me. I'm probably going to celebrate that in 2024. Or I might wait until my second property hits that milestone as well, and then I'll have a lot more to celebrate. Why throw two parties? Just throw one, right? So again, we are investing for the future, not saving only for the future. And so in order to do that, we must understand how our society works. And what do I always tell you? You do not do what everybody else does. Do not do what everybody else does, right? Because everybody else is losing. So you want to do the opposite. If everybody refinances or sells their properties every 5 to 7 years, you're not going to do that. So why do people always refinance? Why do people always sell their properties? Well, I'm going to give you the 3 Ds, and then I'm going to give you my Festus Book of Business. I'm going to give you the Festus Bible. I'm going to give you my Bible. I'm going to show you how things really work. So make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. So what are the 3 Ds? The 3 Ds are degrees. When you get a degree, now your house isn't big enough. Now you just need something bigger and better, right? When you get a divorce, now you need to downsize. Now you don't need so much space. When you get a degree, divorce, and what was the other one? Can't think of it. Anyway, with that being said, let's move into my Festus Book of Business. All right. Why do people always move? Now, the first reason people move is going to be they want a home. They're normally going to move into the best community that they can find. It's always going to be the best community. I love my neighbors. I love where I live. Everything is great and dandy. Then what happens? You have a baby, or you have family members move in. Now, whoa, it's not enough house. It's too crowded. In some cases, that might actually be the case. In most cases, it's a want and not a need. And so within 5 to 7 years, you're moving. You see, the problem isn't that you want something bigger and better. The problem is that you're paying the bank more than you pay yourself. That is my only issue. I understand why you're doing it. I just hate that for your pockets. So now we're moving because we've grown our family. Okay, cool. Now that the family is grown, the kid is 5, 6, 7 years old. This is where another group of people will move again. And if they move at this pivotal spot, they will continue to move every 5 to 7 years. I can promise you that. That is the Festus Book of Business that I'm telling you right now. So what are they going to move for? They're going to move because they want the best schools for their children, and they want to be in that school district. Okay, your child's 5, 6, 7 years old. You moved because you want the best schools. So first, you bought the property where you had the best neighbors. Second, you moved because your family was growing too big. But you didn't think about the schools. You didn't think about all that stuff. So you move again because of the schools. Now, your children grow up. They're 16, 17, 18, getting ready to go to college. You move again. You probably move into a bigger house because you want to host children, family, and events, or you move into a smaller house. This is where you downsize because you no longer have kids and you telling them to figure it out for themselves. So there's 4 to 5 times that you're going to move. And if you get that bigger house, you will then eventually downsize when nobody else is coming over, right? And then last but not least, because you never paid it off to begin with, you either give it to your children or you sell it and move into a retirement home. That is the Festus Book of Business, right? So we talked about divorce. We talked about degrees, diplomas, graduating college, all that good stuff, right? We talked about refinancing and how that continues to affect people. We talked about, one, you move for your neighbors, then you move for your kids and family, then you move for the schools, then you move for yourself into that big property, and then you downsize when all the kids move out, and then you might hit that retirement home, right? So if that was every 5 years, that's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Most people don't buy a home until they're in their 30s anyway, so they're about 32 to 35 years of age. If it takes you 30 years to go through that process, you're now 65 years of age. If you do it every 7 years, you might be in your low 70s. All that time that you moved, you've enjoyed life, maybe more than the one person that stayed in the same home, but that same person enjoyed life in a different way. They paid off their house, passed it on to their kids, and then they sold it to me. This is how I got this house. Somebody literally died in this house, passed it on to their children, and then gave this to me. And they got $215,000. That's what they got because they invested in themselves rather than the bank. Someone might say, but Festus, what if there's opportunity in the market and you can get a good deal? Well, that's not right now, but yes, that is something that can happen. When there's opportunity in the market, for example, in 2025, I expect interest rates to drop. Prices will not drop, but they will be relatively stable now. People will be scared. This is the key. People will not be entering the market because of the high interest rates, because it was more expensive. And when that becomes the sentiment that is broadcasted all over the news, all over every outlet, you're now going to have less competition, right? These real estate agents aren't going door to door. They're not putting flyers in everybody's mail. And so when now your only competition are investors, these people who haven't been getting offers on their property all of 2024 are used to getting lowball offers. They're used to making concessions. They're used to agreeing a little bit. They're used to taking $5,000, $10,000 off of the property. And now the interest rate is dropping. Now the interest rate is getting a bit lower. Now people got used to 8% interest rates when we're at 6%, or if you got good credit and you can get a high 5% interest rate, you now start to think that that's a good deal. What would be a bad deal is selling your 2% or 3% interest rate property for a 5.5% property just because interest rates used to be 8% and you're like every other American and you're dumb because you just decided that 5% is now good due to the fact that it was at 8% just a year ago. Really? That's what they want you to think. That's what they want you to do. I'm not dumb. I know that I will never see this interest rate that I got on these two properties ever again. I know that we're not going to see a housing market crash like 2008 ever again. So when you seize the moment, you must seize it completely. And now for all of you who have not bought in 2008, like I didn't have the chance to do. And everybody is an expert. Everybody's a millionaire in 2008 if they were smart enough to invest. But you know what? They are experts because they did not do what everyone else did. When everybody else left the market, they entered it. So in 2022, when everybody was buying up properties left and right, there was still some people who were dummies that were smart just because of timing. Hopefully they watch this video and they become smart because of learning and they don't sell, right? Because I've only had one of my properties for about 3.5 years and I'm about to break even on the interest versus principal this month of December. The other property I got a little bit later, so I might have to wait a little bit longer for that. But in the next 2 years, I can see that also happening where my principal is now surpassing my interest. Do you know what that feeling will feel like? To know that every time I pay my mortgage, I pay myself more than I pay the bank. It's a beautiful feeling that I can't wait to enjoy. In fact, I'll be more happy to pay every single month. More and more happy to pay every single month. And I put extra on the principal every month as well. And so I'm super, super excited to see what that next month statement looks like and how much principal I'm getting versus interest. Now, things are already starting to shape up. Things are already starting to shape up. People are going to lose their interest rate. Only about 1/3 of people own their home outright. America has always been like this. So what does that mean? That means anybody who bought a 2%, 3%, 4%, or even a 5% interest rate, only about 33% of them are going to have that interest rate 5 years from now. Because history always repeats itself. So that means in 5 good years, only about 33% of people are going to have a 3% to 5% interest rate. And I'm talking low fives. How do I know that? History. I watch history not only in the stock market, but in the real estate market. So I know that only 33% of people and 100% of those who watch this video are going to be smart enough to keep their interest rate. This is what's going to happen. We were already at 70% of people either refinance or purchase the property with a 2% to 3% rate. They were under 4%, 70% of people. Now, going into 2024, that 70% number is already 60%. Let me tell you how that happened. So when I was still refinancing at Chase Bank, there were people who had just refinanced to a 2.5% mortgage, but their roof started to leak. They didn't have the money because all they did was refinance. They didn't pull any cash out. What did they have to do? They had to call Chase Bank 1 month later after just refinancing and paying good money to refinance to a 2.5% mortgage. And now they had to get a 3.25% interest rate. When I tell you this person was sad, felt defeated, but they said, I should have taken money out when I had the chance, right? They had no money for emergencies. So take a look at this. You are going to get this money right now to fix your roof, to fix your house. I know you got a family. I know you got things to take care of. All that's good and well. But you didn't have an emergency fund. You didn't think you needed one after all this time. You know how to spend money on groceries. You know how to spend money on food. You know how to spend money on everything you want or everything you think you need, but you never know how to save for an emergency. The truth is, you never cared enough to save for an emergency. And so all your money goes out the door every single month because you don't ever think about actually keeping some in your bank account. 10% of people have already fell into that trap. 10%, because I know nobody wants to sell their properties right now. So that means out of that 70%, now that we're at 60%, 10% of people already fell into that trap. And we got about 30% more to go. Because I'm telling you, history always repeats itself. So 30% more homes are either going to be refinanced or they're going to be sold. And to be honest with you, there's a lot of reasons to not buy right now. Not only are the interest rates super, super high, but the demand is so high for a property right now, and the supply is super, super low, which is keeping the values very high. On top of that, with low supply, what does that mean? You don't have many options. I'm not somebody who goes and picks up the crumbs. I was looking at properties in late 2021, and those were crumbs. There weren't many beautiful houses left on the market. Only the ones that were beautiful were $600,000 and up. I'm talking about, magnificent properties. Those were like $600,000 and up. The best that I found was $350,000. That was probably the cheapest and most affordable at the time. It might have been like $385,000. Interest rates were about 6% at the time. So if I didn't already have a property, I'd have been looking at that as a really, really good option. With that being said, right now interest rates are stupid high. They're also low supply. So you don't have many options to choose from. We all know that in the next 5 years, people are going to get used to these rates. And so what's going to happen, that 60% of people that are under 4% with their mortgages is going to get down to 33%, 34%, maybe 40. let's be generous and say 40% of people are going to keep their mortgage. That means 20% more people are still going to have to sell off or refinance. And I'm being real generous with that 40% just for even numbers. So in 2025, I expect more supply. I expect a lower interest rate, 5.9, 5.8%. And that's if you have excellent credit. I'm talking about 780 and above, right? Those are the people that's going to get the high 5%. Everybody else, they're going to be looking at low 6 to mid 6s, okay? I expect job growth to continue. I expect people to get incremental raises. And then with a drop in interest rates of about 2% from 8% to about 6.5%, I expect that more people will be able to afford something new. And then with the lower interest rates properties that they've had, they're going to have more equity to put down on a house that didn't go up crazy in value. So with all that equity, they'll be able to get a smaller or reduced payment. Does that make sense? So because you had a real investment with a less than 3% interest rate, you're now able to beat inflation and property growth. So now you're using your cash because you don't actually have the income to afford the property. You're using your equity to now afford the new property. I personally would not do that. If I go and buy a new property, especially when there's more supply, especially when there's less demand, especially when the interest rates are lower, it will not be because I sold one of my investments. It'll be because I had the extra cash. It's because it wasn't tied up in other assets and moving vehicles. It's because it was a part of my disposable income that I could then use to either buy an investment or buy a personal residence for myself. If you like this video, make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. You should subscribe for more Festus books like the one I just gave you today, because I'm telling you, this information is extremely invaluable. You cannot duplicate this anywhere else. This is happening. We're at 60%. Soon enough, we'll be at 50%, and I'll be making another video just like this. Let me make a prediction of when we'll be at 50%. Let's do it. I don't actually think people will be able to refinance their properties in 2024. And that's a long 2024. That's a long 12 months. Because the interest rates will be too high and the increase in wages won't be that much. So refinances will be off the table. What we might see, however, are more people putting beautiful homes on the market that they can no longer afford for one reason or another. And because of that, they sell and begin to rent. So when do I believe that most people will be at 50%? I'm going to say that will happen in July of 2024. And the reason why I'm saying July of 2024 is because of the summer months is when we see the most demand for housing. And in order to quell some of that demand, people will be putting their houses on the market, especially those who were struggling all year round. They're going to have agents. They're going to have so many people in their ear telling them to sell now because they're not going to have another chance to get the most bang for their buck. And when property values are going down, this will be the best chance for them to retain some of that property value. And so I believe July of 2024 is going to be the best time to do it. It's when families are moving. It's when people are going on vacation and using all their extra income. This is the best time to sell your property. And I believe we will hit that 50% mark right around June to July. I'm going to say July because June is where it's going to heat up, and July is when that 50% mark will be hit. So if you like this video, make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. You know I post every single day at 8 a.m. daily on YouTube and on Rumble, and I can't wait to see you on the next one. Peace.